There is a question most people never ask themselves, and it is not because the question is complicated, it is because the answer would change everything. The question is this: what if the person you have been waiting for your entire life was never supposed to come from the outside? What if that presence you keep searching for in someone else has been locked inside you this whole time, buried under years of silence and compromise? Stay with me here, because what I am about to walk you through is not advice, it is a mirror. And mirrors do not care whether you are ready to look. Most people believe that love is something you find. You meet someone, something clicks, and suddenly life feels fuller, warmer, more complete. But Carl Jung saw something far more unsettling beneath that story. He noticed that what we call falling in love is often not a meeting between two people at all. It is a collision between a person and their own unmet need wearing someone else's face. That sounds harsh, I know, but think about it honestly for a moment. Think about the last time you felt that magnetic pull toward someone, that almost electric recognition, as if you had known them before you ever spoke a word. That feeling was real, but it was not coming from them. It was coming from a blueprint inside your own psyche, an image Jung called the anima or the animus, depending on your inner landscape. This image is not a fantasy. It is a psychic structure built from every early experience of love, absence, safety, and loss you ever lived through. And here's what makes it so dangerous. When this image stays unconscious, it does not sit quietly. It drives you. It chooses for you. It pulls you toward the same kind of person again and again, not because that person is right for you, but because they match the wound you have never healed. I want you to try something right now. Do not think about who hurt you. Think about who you became in order to be loved. That version of you, the one who learned to shrink, to please, to become what someone else needed before you even checked in with yourself, that version did not appear by accident. She was engineered by survival. He was crafted in the dark, in childhood, in moments no one remembers, but the body never forgets. Jung had a word for this constructed self. He called it the persona. It comes from the Latin word for mask, and that's exactly what it is. Not a lie, but a performance so deeply rehearsed that the actor forgot they were acting. You put on the persona to navigate the world, to be acceptable, to earn belonging, and at some point the mask became so familiar that you mistook it for your actual face. But here's what no one tells you about wearing a mask for too long. The face underneath starts to disappear. Not literally, of course, but psychologically. You lose access to your real desires, your real anger, your real voice. And in the absence of those things, you start building your identity around other people's responses to you. When they smile, you exist. When they pull away, you vanish. Not in the world, but inside yourself, which is far worse. Let me tell you about a pattern I have seen so many times, it almost feels like a universal script. Someone enters a relationship full of hope. They give everything, their time, their attention, their emotional labor. They reshape their schedule, their friendships, sometimes even their dreams, all to make room for this other person. And slowly, without anyone noticing, they hollow themselves out. The relationship might look fine from the outside, but inside there is a growing emptiness that no amount of closeness can touch. And when it finally ends, or when the distance becomes unbearable, they don't grieve the other person, they mourn themselves. They grieve the version of who they were before they disappeared into the love they were trying to earn. This is not weakness. This is the shadow at work. Jung described the shadow as the part of yourself you have rejected, the qualities you were taught were unacceptable, the emotions you learned to bury because expressing them meant risking rejection. Your anger lives there. Your ambition lives there. Your hunger for something more than you were told you deserved, that lives there too. And every time you silence those parts of yourself to keep the peace in a relationship, the shadow does not go away. It grows.
it mutates. It starts showing up as exhaustion, as resentment you cannot name, as a strange sadness that hits you in quiet moments when everything should feel fine, but nothing does. You might even start to feel numb, not because you stopped caring, but because your psyche shut down the very channels through which you used to feel, as a form of self-protection you never consciously chose. That numbness is not indifference. It is a wound dressed up as composure. And until you peel back that dressing and look at what is underneath, you will keep mistaking survival for living. Here is the paradox that sits at the center of all of this. The very thing you are doing to keep love alive is the thing that is killing it. When you abandon yourself to hold on to someone else, you do not become more lovable, you become less real. And people can feel that, even if they cannot articulate it. They sense that the person in front of them is performing rather than present. And over time, that performance creates exactly the distance you were trying to prevent. You were trying to avoid rejection, and you ended up rejecting yourself first. If these words are hitting something deep right now, something you haven't let yourself feel in a while, I want you to take a breath. And if this kind of reflection matters to you, consider subscribing, not as a favor to me, but as a decision to keep this kind of conversation close. Because the version of you that is listening right now deserves to be heard more often. Now let me take you one layer deeper. There is a concept in Jungian psychology called individuation, and it might be the most misunderstood idea in all of depth psychology. People hear the word and think it means becoming independent, becoming strong, becoming someone who does not need anyone. But that is not what it means at all. Individuation is the process of becoming whole. It is the slow, often painful work of gathering every scattered piece of yourself, the parts you hid, the parts you were ashamed of, the parts you traded away for approval, and bringing them back into one integrated self. It does not mean you stop loving. It means you stop loving from a place of deficit. There is a massive difference between reaching for someone because you're empty and reaching for someone because you're full and want to share what you have. The first is dependency. The second is intimacy. And most people have never experienced the second because they have never done the work the first one demands. Think of it like this. Imagine you have been carrying a lantern your entire life, but you never lit it because someone once told you your light was too much. So instead, you spent decades standing next to other people's fires, warming yourself with borrowed heat, grateful for proximity, but never truly warm. Individuation is the moment you realize the lantern was always yours, the match was always in your pocket, and the warmth you were searching for was never something anyone else could give you. It was something only you could ignite. This is not a metaphor meant to comfort you. It is a psychological reality that Jung documented across thousands of cases. The people who transformed their lives were never the ones who found better partners first. They were the ones who found themselves first, and then everything around them shifted in response. But here is why most people resist this. Lighting your own fire means standing in the dark first. It requires sitting with the discomfort of not knowing who you are when you are not performing for someone else. It involves facing the grief of all the years you spent dimmed. And that grief is real. It is heavy, and no one should pretend otherwise. But on the other side of that grief is something extraordinary. A kind of freedom that does not depend on circumstances, a presence that does not waver when someone else withdraws, a sense of self so rooted and it cannot be shaken by rejection because it was never built on approval in the first place. Jung once wrote that your vision becomes clear only when you look inside your heart, and that whoever looks outside dreams, while whoever looks inside awakens. That was not poetry. That was a clinical observation from decades of watching people transform. People who focused outward kept reliving the same patterns. Looking inward is what allowed others to break them. Not because they became perfect, but because they became honest. They were clear about their needs. They acknowledged what they had been putting up with. They recognized the distance between the person they portrayed and who they truly were.
And from that honesty, something remarkable emerged. Not control, but clarity. Not power over others, but sovereignty over themselves. This is what individuation looks like in real life. It is not a single dramatic breakthrough. It is 1,000 quiet mornings where you choose yourself before you check to see if anyone else has. It is the slow rebuilding of a relationship with your own inner world, a world you abandoned because someone once made you believe it was not enough. When you stop building your worth around someone else's attention, you do not become cold, you become calm. There is a stillness that comes from knowing who you are without needing a mirror. And that stillness is magnetic, not because it attracts people, although it does, but because it attracts the right ones, the ones who are not looking for someone to complete them either, the ones who show up whole and want to share wholeness rather than fill holes. There is a version of your life that you have not lived yet, not because it is far away, but because you have been standing at the threshold afraid to walk through. On this side is the familiar pattern, the giving, the waiting, the hoping, the slow erosion of self. On the other side is something unknown, and the unknown is terrifying precisely because it has no guarantees. But here's what I want to leave you with. The familiar has never given you what you actually needed. It gave you the illusion of safety while quietly stealing your substance. The unknown at least offers the possibility of truth, and truth, even when it is uncomfortable, is the only foundation strong enough to build a real life on. Stop looking for someone to complete the sentence you started about yourself. You are not a half waiting for a whole. You are a whole who forgot. You don't require someone to rescue you. You don't require someone else's validation to feel that you matter. What truly matters is taking the time to sit with yourself until you rediscover what you've buried. It's time to stop bargaining with your own worth and to realize that the pain you've been carrying isn't proof that something is missing. It is a signal that something is trying to come home. And that something is you. Not the version of you that performs, not the version that adjusts and accommodates and smiles through exhaustion. The real one. The one who has been waiting in the silence beneath all that noise, patient, intact, unbroken. She has always been there. He has always been there. And the moment you turn inward and finally listen, everything you thought you needed from the outside begins to dissolve. Not because it stops mattering, but because it stops being the point. The point was always you. It was always you.